Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of It's Too Late, #1 late night show in America, not hosted by a communist.
That's right.
That's right. Joined as always by the #1 producer in late night. It's Dave Willimowski. Dave! Dave, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Oh, shiny.
Yeah.
Auto.
Wait, hold on, Dave. What did you guys do for Father's Day?
Oh, actually, that's an interesting story.
Oh, never mind then.
Okay.
Starting off with some sports news tonight. The Boston Celtics are champs once again after their Game 5 victory over the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the sports world is buzzing about the half-court buzzer beater by Celtics point guard Peyton Pritchard. Take a look at this.
4 seconds to go. Missed free throw. Horford the rebound. Here's Pritchard. He loves these. Puts it up in front of the buzzer. Bang!
Wow.
Pritchard at the buzzer with a three-pointer.
Wow.
He's done it again.
Can you believe that? Now, okay, that is a heck of a shot. But, you know, Dave, let's take a look at that again in slow motion.
Oh, okay.
Now, I want to title this clip right here, How to Eliminate My Interest in the NBA in 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5 steps.
You're not supposed to do that.
No. Yeah, they don't ever call traveling anymore. That's why I don't even watch the NBA. Don't. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But for his part, Mavs owner Mark Cuban had very little to say about the finals finishing up this week, instead deciding to announce to the world in a tweet. Check this out right here. I won't vote for anyone that doesn't believe climate change is real. Oh. Now, that's an apparent jab at GOP nominee Donald Trump. Now, this has left audiences wondering, now, where did Cuban's opinions come from? Did they perhaps come from his 288-foot yacht with a basketball court? Or maybe from his fleet of private jets?
No.
Yeah. In celebrity news, sources say actress Sydney Sweeney, is in talks with Lucasfilm to play a role in a future Star Wars production. Now, some have mused that she would make an excellent reboot of the character Princess Leia. Now, others say that she could take on the persona of Mara Jade.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we all know the role that she was born to play. That would be Slutty Twi'lek number 3.
All right.
Also in celebrity news, hip-hop artist Lizzo was recently photographed rocking a red bikini while on vacation in Brazil. Now, ironic that this happened around June 6th, since this is the worst thing to happen on a beach since D-Day.
Oh, my God.
Now, speaking of that, we've talked about D-Day. Of course, it's Pride Month. There's Father's Day. A lot of holidays, a lot of important dates to remember in June, Dave. Of course, last weekend we had Father's Day, and who better to wish everyone a happy Father's Day than Irvin Magic Johnson?
Oh.
Here he is, seen with his family.
Oh.
Man. Could have been a power forward, instead became a power bottom. I'll let you figure out what I mean. Also, today, oh my God, Dave, today was June 19th, which of course is known as Juneteenth or Freedom Day. For those unfamiliar, Juneteenth is the day that all the white people go to work while the blacks stay at home.
Oh.
So like every other day.
Oh, okay.
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 But speaking of getting up to go to work to pay for the welfare whores, let me tell you about tonight's sponsor, which is Fox & Sons Coffee, which you can find at foxandsons.com. If you use promo code ITL, you get 18% off orders of $25 or more. Shipping's always free on orders over $40 or more, which is online at foxandsons.com. I actually have, check this out, Dave. This is the Din Blend Light. Imagine that on tonight's show, of all things. We would do the Din Blend Light because, as we know, Dave, the Din Blend Light is...
Like the light.
No, come on, Dave. You're in this now. You're a part of this. You can't escape.
I have plausible
your face,
deniability.
Your likeness has been featured.
No.
Anyway, hold on. I've learned to
let it out. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't actually put your nose right up to the sniff hole. That's how you get,
pink eye.
So anyway, that's Fox & Sons Coffee, which you can find at foxandsons.com. Use promo code ITL. Guys, we're going to be back with the meme of the week and the viewer mail right after this commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Let me tell you about tonight's other sponsor, which is the Tennessee Hot Sauce Company, when you can find it at tnhotsauceco.com. newfound.com. Use promo code It's Too Late, all one word. It's too late, because they're a sponsor that understands that you just use the whole title and not 3 letters. Because I mean, what does ITL mean? It could be it's thick, lads. You know,
ladies.
It's the ladies. Yeah, I thoroughly laughed. Yeah. So anyway, it's too late. I actually have check out this here. This is the honey habanero, which, as the name suggests, it has honey in it.
Oh,
this is honey flavored hot sauce. Yeah. Imagine that. Honey. What a time to be alive. See, only white people could make stuff like this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like those people talk about how we don't have seasoned things, but we're the ones who make all the hot sauce. Yeah. You come on, Dave.
Well, hot sauce is cross-cultural. Yeah.
Come on, Dave.
Remember?
So anyway, that's the Tennessee Hot Sauce Company. And you find it at tnhotsauceco.com. Use promo code It's Too Late. Hey, Dave.
Yes, Alan.
What time is it?
Time for Meme of the Week.
I hope you'll excuse me if I appear a trifle excited, but I've just come into possession of a cure for insomnia. It comes in capsule form. For best results, they must be taken internally. Here is the handy applicator. It is an amazingly simple device. An idiot can operate it, and indeed many do.
Wow, we got to get that as a sponsor on the show. Yeah. But we do have a bonus meme. Check out the bonus meme.
Oh. Oh.
The face at the end.
Oh, yeah.
That's what does it. Oh, my God. How are we doing on time?
I don't know. It's kind of tight now.
What are you talking about? We're not even at 10 minutes yet.
I
swear to God, there's one thing we don't rehearse on the show and you immediately blow it. I swear to God. All right, since we have all the time in the world, let's answer the viewer mail.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what those numbers.
You don't know what 932 means?
Is that what that?
And it's going up every second? Yeah, imagine that. It's going up every second. All right. Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Dave, is a dairy cow who can't produce a milk dud or an utter failure? I thought I took those buttons away from you. No. Well done, Andrew. Jonathan Carranza writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what is your favorite anime? Oh. See, we have a man of culture as well.
Yeah.
Dave, you got any favorite animes? You watch that Japanese animations?
I haven't really watched a lot of anime. I think I've watched a couple episodes, but none of them were actually good enough that I actually remember what they were. I think the only one I actually remember, because I really enjoyed, was that Castlevania.
Oh yeah, Castlevania.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah. Oh my God, do you remember the end of season 4? That was crazy. Yeah.
I didn't finish it.
Remind me to never speak to you again after tonight.
I'll write that down.
Okay, put that on the note. Jonathan, of course, obviously it would be Cowboy Bebop. That is.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's the greatest anime of all time. Castlevania was indeed really good, very good. So there you go. Yeah, but none of that naughty stuff. That's that's weird, Jonathan. That'd be
weird.
It's weird. Yeah, don't
search that out.
Yeah, don't look for those things.
Wouldn't do that.
Bing. All right. Lyle Durio writes, Dear Alan and Dave, World War III or no? I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I'm going. I don't follow, but I'm gonna say no.
I think that just the global economy is gonna collapse, and that'll be enough.
We'll have internal strife, I think.
Yeah, that'll be enough to do us in. We don't need a Like, we don't have to get everyone else involved. We got it covered in this country.
Got this.
Yeah. Let's see. Scrolling down all the people who write terrible questions. We're on to Keith McQuarrie, who writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what's the best way to avoid the draft? Oh, that's an important question. Did you see that? They're wanting to make it where all the boys are automatically enrolled, and now they're also wanting to add the girls to go along with the boys being automatic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
What about you, Dave? Would you aid and abet your children dodging the draft?
I don't know how you go about it. I remember Mary always said when I was a younger man that if anything like that ever happened, she was just going to cut off my finger. I don't know if that works, or if you have to do the gay thing. Does that still work? The gay thing.
So I was asking about your children.
Oh,
but maybe
maybe
Mary will still cut off your finger if you don't protect them from the draft.
That'd be motivation.
But we've certainly learned something about the Wilimowski household tonight, haven't we?
Pretty severe.
Yeah. I tell you what, as you know, that triggers me quite a bit. So,
yeah,
Dave, I don't recommend it.
It's very
thoughtless.
That's all I'm saying.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Oh my God! Speak of the devil, Mary Lynn Wilimowski writes, Dear Alan and Dave, I've been on a lot of elevators this last week. In your opinion, who should go first, the people entering or the people exiting the elevator? Now, Mary, this isn't even my opinion. This is just objective fact. The people getting off the elevator go first because they're making room for the people who are getting on the elevator. I think this is a public service announcement. Yeah, if the elevator can hold 10 people and it's got 10 on it and 5 are getting off and 5 more want to get on, the 5 getting on can't happen first.
Yeah, they're where they want to be.
You can't go to 15 and then subtract to 10 when there's room for 10. That's retarded. And if for some reason that's not been your experience, then Yankee behavior.
Oh,
that's what that is. That is Yankee behavior.
That's kind of it's just bad people.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was trying to be nice and call them Yankees, but yeah, you're right. Bad people. they're bad people. Because good people would not do that. Good Southern folk. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. And finally this evening, Ryan Seifert writes, Dear Alan and Dave, is the Confederate Museum having any celebrations for the big Juneteenth holiday? They would, but they're short-staffed. So, guys, we're going to be back with Kyle Anzalone of the Libertarian Institute at antywar.com right after this commercial break. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for It's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Email us at info@alanmosley.tv. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Our guest this evening, joining us to extend our series on Pride Month and the topics that we think are gay, is, of course, the news editor at the Libertarian Institute, the opinion editor at antiwar.com, and the host of Conflicts of Interest, along with our good friends Will Porter and Connor Freeman. Kyle Anzalone, welcome back to the show.
Alan, thanks for having me back on. Always a pleasure.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you're back on. Well, let me start off by asking you the question that we've asked all of our guests this month. How are you celebrating Pride Month?
You know, I didn't even realize it was Pride Month until people started making skid marks on the roads painted with rainbow flags, which is always really confusing to me because it has to be a psyop, right? Where they want people to do this. Because why else would you paint brightly colored paint on a road? Of course, people are going to leave skid marks. So this is, I don't know, man. It's always just such a mess. But I do get a couple good laughs out of stories like that.
Now, okay, so since you brought that up, because we talked a little bit about that last week. So I don't live in a place where there are any roads with pride flags painted on them. I mean, what's the nearest pride crosswalk to you?
I have not personally seen one.
Okay, so because that's my thing is that, you know, I see in the news like, oh, well, this happened in, you know, whatever, Portland, you know, or oh, this happened in I think there was one in Fort Lauderdale where a truck did a burnout on one, and then everyone was all up in arms about it. But I think you bring up an interesting point though, that they're going to paint it as a hate crime. But I would wonder if I could get like a Google Maps a picture of that same intersection.
Explain to you exactly what happens, right? And you're absolutely right. I know where you're going. So the first time this got reported, it was some kids on e-scooters in Oregon or something like that. And honestly, if you watch the video, it doesn't look like I when I was a little kid, we used to make skid marks all over the place on our bikes. I know how to do it. That's not what these kids are doing. They're just riding around in circles on brightly colored paint, which is leaving a few marks behind. Right. And so now this is a major national news story. And, oh, we're going to prosecute these kids for doing this. So now you have a whole bunch of right wingers who have these big trucks and cars who see an opportunity to gain a ton of clout with either their friends or their internet or whatever. And so now people are doing burnout all over these things. And of course, they're painted on roads. And so there's ample opportunity to do it. And it's created this gigantic, I don't know what to call it. Just it's a gigantic cultural problem in America that now everybody either has to be outraged that there's pride flags on the street and that people are being prosecuted for, or that people are doing burnouts on them. And the pride rally types are pretending like when people do burnouts on a pride flag in the street, that's somehow equivalent to like some gay bashing from the 1990s or something absurd like that.
Well, okay, so you said a minute ago, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to erase my notes. We're going to talk about this now. So you said the word psyop. Now that's a word that gets thrown around a lot, usually a lot of times in a more humorous way in our kind of cultural side of the woods, but sometimes not in a humorous way. Sometimes a very serious way. So on a scale to 1 to 10, 1 being there's never anything nefarious going on ever, and 10 being we are literally in the Matrix, none of this is real, you're not even real. You're actually a figment of my imagination. So that being the scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think things like this genuinely are psyops meant to sow division and create headlines versus how much of it is a self-fulfilling prophecy? People make things out where they don't exist, all on their own.
I would say like a 7.5 here. I mean, okay. I'm pretty close to being sure that, especially this kind of thing, right? We have holiday celebrations and we decorate roads for everything. Christmas, Hanukkah, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, right? Like almost any time of the year I drive in my little town's downtown area, there's some kind of like things on the light poles to celebrate what holiday it is. It's only for Pride that people start painting the street, right? Can you imagine if we start painting Christmas trees or God forbid, like a menorah on the street or something like that, and then somebody left some skid marks over it? Of course it would cause a giant outrage. People be, oh, they're desecrating the Christmas tree. This is the war on Christmas and all that. So yeah, I think this one is probably a psyop.
Well, I would also say, too, far be it from me to still have some leftover vestiges of my libertarian autism. But this is the problem of having protected political classes, right? Protected classes is because, let's say, hypothetically, based on what you just said, let's say we're going to have Memorial Day. And let's say we've decided that in our podunk town right now in front of the Dairy Queen, we're going to paint yellow ribbons on the crosswalks. And then somebody, God forbid, I can't believe they would hate our country this much, they do a burnout on the yellow ribbon. Now, but the difference, though, is, as a dog whistle to our right-wing brethren, but would they want those people thrown in jail and charged with a hate crime for doing it, or would it just be well, those people, they suck?
You know, it depends on the reaction, right? Because if somebody does it, And then you do get this overreaction of, oh, these people should be in jail, or we should run them out of town, or, we're going to chant at them, America, love it or leave it, or whatever the kind of right-wing slogan of the day is. Then you're going to get people who, when I was a teenager, I was like this, right? When you would see people get ass mad over something stupid, you would do that stupid thing to make them even more mad, right? Because you're going to get to do something stupid, and they're going to look twice as stupid as you just for coming at you for doing something stupid, right? And so now, you've driven this massive cycle again, and then you get all kinds of clout because you're making the people mad who people like to make mad. And so, it really a lot of how things work, especially now with the social media and how instantly we could see videos of all these things all over the country, every react, right? And that drives so much of how people think and feel about different things.
Well, okay, so that you brought up the social media angle. All right, so this is oftentimes what I tell people. I actually had a big family reunion this past weekend, and my family, we billed it as the last Mosley family reunion, and that sounds morbid, but it actually is true because I'm the youngest son of the youngest son. My dad's 75, and he's the youngest of 8. So this quite literally is the last family reunion because they're all going to be dead soon. Sorry. Anyway. So we, topics like this sometimes come up at family gatherings, but the majority of the people in that room, first of all, the majority of the people in that room don't even know what Twitter is, right? Like they don't even know what social media is. They've never seen it before in their life. Of the ones who do know, they're watching cat videos and they don't care about politics at all. And then of the ones who do have it and do keep up with politics, even those people, most of them don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. So the point being is I try to remind people that social media tends to magnify things, which can certainly be useful. I mean, a lot of the work that you do, I think a lot of people get to see it, and they wouldn't perhaps see it as readily if it wasn't for social media. So I'm not saying that it should be, scoured from the earth necessarily. But it does magnify things and give you an inaccurate representation of what people think. Like, no, Twitter might think this, but people don't think this because Twitter isn't people. Twitter's not real life, as Dave Chappelle said. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, and in fact, a lot of times I've noticed, and this is something that always surprises me, I meet people who form their opinions of what people think based on like the comment section of a YouTube video or a Facebook post. And they'll say, oh, there's this picture of Donald Trump and look how hateful the replies are. Or, there's this picture of this black guy and look how racist the replies are. And, as far as going back to how, much of society, I think there is like a real psyop going on, Alan. I think a lot of the replies and a lot of the replies to the replies in these comment sections are actually bots replying and then arguing with other bots. And they're not even like actual people having these conversations. And a lot of it is just completely fictitious and made to really make Americans feel like their fellow Americans are their enemies.
Well, boy, what a fantastic segue, Kyle. Speaking of psyops that make Americans feel like other Americans are their enemies, let me show everybody, in case you don't hang out very much on social media, there was a website going around this past week that featured a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals' names on it, people that our audience would recognize. So there was this site going around, and they had on the front plate here, roller coaster from Trumpists to communists, the forces in the U.S. impeding aid to Ukraine and how they do it. So this website had this huge, beautiful chart. It was a beautiful chart, by the way. This huge, beautiful chart with this listing with all the data and the sources of all these different organizations and individuals, whether they're a politician or whether they're a journalist or whatever, and what organization, who represent or who they represent, if they're a Democrat, if they're a Republican. And the whole point of it being is these are people who have spoken out against Ukraine. Now, I'm not 100% sure who is actually putting this list together and what their motivation is other than just blind support for Ukraine no matter what. But basically, if you are a public figure and you ever went out on the record and said, well, I'm against, writing a blank check to Ukraine, well, that is enough. That is enough for you to be put on the Ukrainian hit list. And I'll have you know, ladies and gentlemen, check out this little corner of the map. There's antywar.com and Kyle Anzalone. No! Kyle Anzalone is going to be assassinated by a Ukrainian hit squad, but silver lining, according to this website, Kyle is a person. That is correct. Kyle is a person. Kyle, how are you doing with your newfound fame and personhood?
Yeah, so this is my first time making an enemies of Ukraine list. I want to just clarify. I don't think this is in any way a hit list, or in any way my personal safety is in jeopardy because I was put on this list. Now, maybe my Twitter account's in jeopardy, and that might be assassinated because I'm on this list. But I do think that I will personally be okay. This is, I think it's called like Tetsly.ua. And it's a Ukrainian website. It's a non-governmental organization. The head of the organization was trained by somebody who works in the U.S. government. So, from that standpoint, this is a little bit concerning to me just because I don't want to be on some U.S. government watch list and having people poke around my private life. I want my freedoms and everything like that. At the same time, I do understand that I am, with my work trying to take on the empire. And so eventually, if I'm at all successful, that is going to land me on a few of these lists. And so in a way, I didn't mind so much. I felt like they kind of represented me in my little bio on the website pretty well. They just gave my name, my bio, the same one I give out to everyone when I go on their program and want them to introduce me. So, there was that. Now, other people on the list, I think, were legitimately smeared and actually had false information posted about them. The only thing incorrect they posted about me is they linked me to this Ukrainian Peace Coalition, which is a group of communists led by Medea Benjamin and Co. Pink. Or I don't know if actually Medea is a communist, but they're all left wingers and everything like that. And while we run their articles on antiwar.com, I've never had a conversation with any of those women. I support their activism, but again, I'm in no way associated with it. Other than that, they linked me to the Institute and antiwar.com. They got Scott Horton on there. And, in some ways, a lot of the people that I most read and really value their opinions and their take on geopolitics and world affairs are also on the list, and their bubble's right around mine. So, I try not to take it as an insult too much whenever you put on a list with Ron Paul and Dan McAdams.
Well, one thing that I think was interesting, because I saw a lot of people commenting on this website, and a lot of people were pointing out that it was, as their own sort of boilerplate there demonstrated, it is a fairly eclectic list of people. So you see a lot of the usual suspects. You see the Institute, you see antiwar.com, you see lots of different authors that have had their works published. You see Ron Paul, you see Danny McAdams. But you also see a lot of the Israel firsters. You see like Brian Mast, for instance, Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro. Oh my God, I could have gone this whole episode without you saying that name. But you see a lot of those people
Laura
on there.
Loomer, and I said Ben Shapiro. I know. You're chastising me.
Yeah, but I the more I look at her, the more I'm convinced Lauren Loomer is a synth.
A what?
A synth. Synthetic. She's not real. That's not a human.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like Sith, like.
No, not Sith.
Okay.
Like, no, we already did our 2.5 hours with Scott for fucking Star Wars, Kyle. We're not talking about Star Wars. No, she's a synth, SYNTH. She's not a real human. That is a android that is designed to support Israel, apparently. Anyway,
that's possible. Yeah. So it is interesting that the list focused so much on just the people who are anti-giving unlimited aid to Ukraine. A lot of members of Congress who are even generally speaking on board with arming Ukraine, or at least taking on Russia, but just aren't enthusiastic, want some oversight of the aid or something like that, are included on this list as well. And then a lot of left wingers too. It's like myself and the libertarians in the middle. You got all these Republicans, kind of mainstream Republicans, the Ben Shapiro types, and then again all the real left wingers. But they didn't include like any of the progressive squad members, which was interesting.
Yeah, I did notice that. And the only reason I bring that up at all is that I think a lot of people walked away from that sort of observation thinking, well, are these just all anti-war advocates? And I said, no, these aren't. A lot of them are. A lot of them are principled anti-war people, anti-war organizations. But obviously the Loomer, Shapiro's, Mass of the world, these are not anti-war people. These are Israel first people. And Israel first doesn't mean Israel's 1A and Ukraine is 1B. All those people are perfectly content to cut off aid to Ukraine, funny enough. They just absolutely don't share that opinion at all with you. I just thought it was interesting that a lot of those people made the list, that they've obviously done enough content to draw the ire of the Ukrainian Western Europe military industrial complex folks, that only writing blank checks to Israel is not enough for them. That you have to also write blank checks to Ukraine.
And they have to be blank checks too. I think that's a big part of it. You can't even write Ukraine a check with some contingencies like, hey, we want to have some oversight over this $50 billion in weapons we're sending you. This $60 billion in cash we're just going to throw into Ukraine. We would like some budgetary sheets and to see where this money is going. Nah, if you want something like that, you're clearly just in the pocket of Vladimir Putin and want all Ukrainians to die.
Well, speaking of being in the pocket of Vladimir Putin, guys, we're going to be right back with more of Kyle Anzalone from the Libertarian Institute right after this commercial break. Don't go away. It's Too Late is proudly sponsored by Fox & Sons Coffee. Fans of It's Too Late use code ITL to receive 18% off orders of $25 or more. Shipping's always free on orders over $37.99. Visit them online at foxnsons.com. That's foxnsons.com. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're joined once again by our friend Kyle Anzalone, host of Conflicts of Interest over at the Libertarian Institute. So Kyle, there's this gentleman right here. Oh, no, not that gentleman. This gentleman right here, who you're in the pocket of, I've heard. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, he had an address just in the last few days that a lot of people sort of rushed to seize on. A lot of the headlines read that Vladimir Putin has offered terms for a ceasefire with Ukraine. But I've heard other people say that, well, it wasn't exactly that he was offering a ceasefire. It's more that he was saying, provided X, Y, and Z happen, then we can talk about a ceasefire. So what's the accurate story there?
Yeah. So what, I guess, since the start of the war, really, Russia has been offering generally the same thing to Ukraine. They have core demands like Ukraine has to accept neutrality and a non-nuclear status. Since the war has started, Russia has annexed 4 regions of Ukraine on top of Crimea, which they annexed in 2014. And so actually we learned from the Washington Post this past weekend, Alan, that initially in April 2022, Russia was willing to settle the conflict in Ukraine without having Ukraine recognize Crimea as Russia's territory. They just wanted Ukraine's Western backers to drop the sanctions on Russia over Russia's annexation of Crimea. So it would be a little bit of a de facto recognition of Crimea by Ukraine, but at the same time, Ukraine and Kiev could still say, oh, we're not going to give up our territorial claims to Crimea. But since that time, Russia has really solidified their control over the Donetsk and Luhansk. So these are the eastern regions of Ukraine, the Donbass, that have been in open rebellion against Kiev since 2014. Russia has solidified their controls there. They've taken a little bit more territory within those regions. So, these are essentially states, right? And Russia controlled, say, 90% of the state of Kentucky or Tennessee or something like that. And then over the past couple of years, they're now really close to taking 100% of those 2 territories. Now, there's 2 more territories in the south. Kherson and Zaporizhia. And Russia has annexed both of those territories, but only controls about 75%, maybe 80, 95% or 85% of those 2 territories. And so Russia is saying that Ukraine has to give up all 4 of those territories and the entire state, not just the part that Russia controls. And in which case, if Ukraine does that, then Russia and Ukraine will immediately enter into like a ceasefire or a pause in the fighting, at which point they'll start talking about a permanent agreement to end the war. Now, Russia is saying that Ukraine does have to recognize those 4 regions, or now 5 regions of Ukraine, as Russian, which is something that Kiev doesn't seem to be interested in doing. At the same time, Alan, this really does, for the most part, represent the facts on the ground. Now, Ukraine will have to give up some territory that they control, but it is pretty clear that the Russian forces are on the offensive right now, and Russia has an overwhelming military capability. And so if Russia really wanted to, they probably could take that territory by force. I think Putin is just kind of trying not to exert too much of his army. If it could be achieved through diplomacy, he would prefer that, even if it is somewhat, negotiating from the Ukrainian side at the point of the barrel of a gun. At least you do avoid losing probably tens, maybe 100,000 more men as Russia takes the territory they won and ultimately just freezes the front lines wherever they decide that should be.
Now, I think what it sort of strikes a lot of people with this is that, so based on what you're saying, it sounds like that earlier on in the conflict, Russia was basically willing to allow Ukraine to save face, is to say that we'll just gentlemanly call this a stalemate, but we're essentially going to take some of this territory. We're gonna kind of maintain a status quo. But I think the most important thing was always that Ukraine not being a nuclear capable and not joining NATO. I think those were the really big ones. But the longer the war drags on, the more loss of life that there is. Of course, we know that there's been incredible loss of life on the Ukrainian side, but there's obviously been loss of life on the Russian side as well. For those of us who are anti-war advocates who will say, well, I just want a scenario in which the minimum number of people die, and diplomatic relations are reestablished, sanctions are dropped, free trade reopens, and we move on with our lives. If you were to hear the Western media sell it, you would think that, well, the only acceptable answer is Russia just declares defeat. They surrender in a war where they're controlling all the territory and they're the ones on the offensive. Russia has to. I think it was Meloni. I think the Italian lady Meloni had just said this recently, that, well, we're all waiting for Russia to announce their surrender. That I know these people aren't stupid, right, Kyle? Like I feel like this is kind of.
I think they are.
Well, you think they are stupid? My attitude has always been that they know that Ukraine is not going to magically have a fairy tale victory in this war, and that they know that they're just sending all these men to their death so that they can launder money. They're evil. They're not stupid. But you think that they are equally stupid as evil.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about Meloni, Trudeau, Macron, Biden, I do think that most of them are actually stupid. I think a step under them, the problem is more hubris and not understanding that they're stupid. So when we're talking about Jake Sullivan, Antony Blinken, when you start to get into the evil territory, that's like Victoria Nuland, Robert Kagan, Hillary Clinton, more people like this. And then, of course, like the truly evil people, Dick Cheney, who are not only trying to remake the world in their image, but also profit from it. Truly disgusting. But I think when we're talking about the leaders, I do think that they're mostly just stupid. And if you listen to the comments that they've made over the past 2 years, that's, I think, wildly transparent at this point. I mean, think about this, Alan. In April of 2022, Ukraine could have agreed to a deal where not only did they not have to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but the Donetsk and Luhansk would have remained independent Ukrainian republics in the same way a similar region in northern Italy is a part of Italy. It just has a lot of autonomy and federalism. So there was a really good deal on the table in April of 2022, where Ukraine agreed to non-alignment. They agreed to not develop nuclear weapons. They did have to get their Western backers to drop sanctions on Russia, but then they were able to keep the borders, at least when they're in Kiev, drawn the way that they've been since 1991. And now, 2 years later, these people are all talking about how Putin is on the brink of defeat. But in reality, Putin has now seized 4 additional regions of Ukraine, and they are never going back. No matter what you think about the Ukrainian military capability, they are not taking this territory back from Russia, and everybody knows it. And so I do think that people like Meloni, Schultz, and Joe Biden probably really do not understand the facts on the ground and just how terrible of a situation it is for the Ukrainians. I mean, maybe in Biden's like more lucid moments, he may really get it and start to comprehend it. But Emmanuel Macron, the French leader, is talking about sending French troops inside Ukraine to train Ukrainian soldiers. And the entire NATO alliance, including the chief of the alliance, Jens Stoltenberg, are all saying that Russia isn't going to view this as an escalation, and they're pretending they're not concerned that these French troops aren't going to be targets for the Russians. And so I don't know, maybe they're all really good liars and actors, and they're doing all this knowing that it's going to drive the West further into war with Russia, closer to a nuclear war. They understand how this is going to benefit their backers and the military industrial complex in their countries and enrich them, and how they're going to get the kickbacks from all of that. At the same time, I kind of think these people think they could really win the conflict and that they're really doing something. I mean, this past weekend, they had the big peace summit, or not peace summit, but that's what they called it, in Switzerland, where Zelensky went and, laid out his list of demands for Putin, including he faces an international tribunal for war crimes, Russian troops completely leave Ukrainian territory, including Crimea, and then Russia pays for all the war damages and reparations in Ukraine. I mean, this is completely ridiculous, and it's never going to happen. And yet all the Western leaders sat there the whole time and nodded their heads while Zelensky was talking. They say, oh, this sounds pretty good. One thing to mention about this whole thing is Biden actually skipped it. All the other world leaders were there, but he flew back and had that moment on the stage in the fundraiser in LA, or wherever the rich people are in California out there, where he froze up and Barack Obama had to lead him off of the stage. But they sent Kamala Harris to represent the Americans there. And so do you really think that she understands what's going on beyond this is a big country and a little country next to each other? I think there's a lot of idiots here, Alan.
By the way, I prefer Barack Obama. That's what he goes by during Pride Month. Is Barack Obama. I
was thinking that was a pretty
that was pretty good. Yeah,
on my part.
Yeah, it's a psyop. You saying Barack Obama was a psyop to get me thinking about Pride Month on the show. One thing I did want to bring up that I've heard in the news, and maybe you know a little bit more about this, is I've heard some people talking about how there are the more militant, dare I say, Nazi parts of the Ukrainian military that are saying, look, if Zelensky deigns to accept terms that are going to lead to peace when we have been geared up to fight Russians, then even if the regime takes a deal, we're just going to be terrorists. We're just going to continue to fly drones, and we're going to continue to try to have bombings happen in Russian territory. I mean, if you're, I know it's a tired old trope to say, well, imagine if things were reversed, but I mean, how would the United States react if we were fighting an enemy, and the enemy that we were clearly 100 times bigger than, and the enemy said, look, I don't care what our general says. If he accepts terms of surrender, we're just going to keep on. We're just going to keep on flying 747s into buildings. If they said that, we would wipe them off the face of the earth. And so I think something that for me is lost. Look, I'm not a Vladimir Putin apologist. I'm not a Russian asset. I don't care. I'm a Tennessean. I'm not even a federal government asset. I'm a Tennessean. But I think what is lost on a lot of people is there has been an incredible amount of restraint that has been shown by a massive nuclear power in a border war with another country that cannot possibly match it militarily. And yet we are to believe that they are the bad guys. They're going to lose. They have to surrender. They have to pay reparations and pay for all the war damages. And Vladimir Putin, by God, he's going to be at The Hague within the end of the year. And as you already pointed out, there is a 0% chance that anything even remotely resembling that is going to happen. Which leads me to the last point, because I know you just did an episode of Conflicts of Interest on this. How do you stop? How do you? I'll ask you two questions. How would you end the war in Ukraine, and then versus how do you see it ending?
Okay, yeah, and I just want to make a couple points on everything you said, because I think you made some really important points there. But before the war started, the big outbreak of war back in, I think this was 2021, after Zelensky first became president, the Russians were really trying to press Ukraine to enforce the Minsk II agreement, which was signed back in 2015, and it really governed what was supposed to happen in Ukraine as far as these two regions, the Donetsk and Luhansk republics, being in rebellion, how they would become an independent part of Ukraine and how the Ukrainians would stop attacking the independent republics there, which was never implemented. And so in 2021, Zelensky wanted to implement this. And so he went to the front lines and he told some of these neo-Nazis that they had to stop fighting, and they laughed in his face. And then you have to imagine, Zelensky's this little dude, right? He's like 5 something. There's this big built neo-Nazi there in full military gear. And Zelensky's like on his tippy toes, pointing at his chest going, I'm the president. I'm 43 years old. You have to listen to me. And they're laughing in his face, right? And I always imagine like some 43-year-old going to me, I'm 43 years old, like it's some sort of like claim to authority. Like I probably would have laughed in his face too when he said that to me. And so, yeah, Zelensky never really had control over these forces, and that's been a constant problem for him. Now, one thing that's been pointed out in April 2022, the Americans steered Ukraine away from accepting this agreement. The UK Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, flew to Kiev and had a discussion with Zelensky and basically said, if you accept this, the West won't back you, but if you continue fighting, we'll give you all the weapons you need. And we also know now from reporting in the New York Times that American officials told Ukraine, this was a bad deal. We won't sign on to this deal. You shouldn't sign on to this deal. They intentionally try to steer Ukraine away from accepting this agreement. What they could have done instead was tell Zelensky, you know what, you should accept this agreement. And not only that, we'll make sure there's maybe some American special forces around you in case any of these neo-Nazis get a little brave and try to screw up the peace deal by taking off your head. And of course, that didn't happen. And instead, again, Zelensky chose to fight. And now we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians because of this. And again, Ukraine has lost 4 territories they would have otherwise kept because of this decision. So there's that point. And then I forgot the other ones. And what was the question you asked me?
Well, okay, so we're going to make
how's
it.
The war going to end?
Yeah. Well, how would you have the war end if you were the one calling the shots versus how do you think it ultimately will end?
Okay, so if I were the one calling the shots, I guess, like if I'm the president of the United States, I call Putin and I say, look, I want to have Ukraine keep as much of their territory as possible. And we're willing to make concessions on NATO's force posture in Eastern Europe in order to achieve that. And so the US could do things like cap the NATO nuclear sharing program. Poland is looking to get U.S. NATO nuclear weapons stored in Poland. We could tell Russia we won't do that. We can remove the anti-missile systems in Poland and Romania. They're the Aegis Ashore systems, and we have other missile systems. We have the THAAD and Patriots and several other missile defense systems that we could deploy there. The Aegis Ashore present a particular problem for Russia because the launchers that fire the interceptors from that system could also fire nuclear-tipped Tomahawk missiles. And so this is an issue for Russia. So again, we could alter our force posture in Eastern Europe in particular in order to de-escalate tensions with Russia. We could look at returning to the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Systems Treaty, the Open Skies Treaty, the New START Treaty. All these things are going to significantly ratchet down the tensions between Russia and the West. And I think when, you look at what Putin is trying to achieve in Ukraine, taking a couple more miles of territory isn't going to make Moscow that much more safe, rather than, having to return to the INF treaty or something like that. So I do think the West has a lot to offer Russia to get Russia to even make territorial concessions. I think it's Zaporizhia that borders the Sea of Azov. And so if you look at a map of Ukraine, there's a strip of land that connects the Crimean Peninsula to Russia. I don't think Russia would be willing to give that territory back, but they hold territory in the north near Kharkiv and the Kherson region in the south. And maybe there would be room to negotiate here for the Ukrainians to actually get some of this territory back if the West is willing to, restructure their nuclear force posture, re-enter treaties with Russia, and remove some of their forces from Eastern Europe, maybe pledge not to carry out war games in Eastern Europe. Of course, this all also involves Ukraine declaring neutrality and things like that as well. So a lot of times people will say, oh, Kyle's just a Putin puppet. Kyle just wants Putin to win the war in Ukraine. That's not true at all. From the very beginning, I've been advocating for Washington not to abandon Ukraine, but rather to negotiate with Russia on behalf of Ukraine to get Ukraine the best deal possible to keep as much of Ukraine's territory and sovereignty as possible. And so a lot of that's been thrown away over the past 2 years. A lot of that is never coming back, right? Mariupol is never going to again be a Ukrainian city. It's really unfortunate. It didn't have to be that way. If we negotiate before the war in April, it wouldn't have been that way, but now it is. And that's a reality that we do have to accept. Now, if you look at how the war will end, I think this is a little bit harder to predict. I think it's even hard to for me to predict exactly what Putin wants to get out of all this as far as territory goes. I mean, his real concern is Ukraine never joining NATO. And so I think in a way that's why the Russians had kind of slowed down their offensive in the Kharkiv region, because taking more Ukrainian territory isn't necessarily going to give Putin what he wants. He needs to just weaken the Ukrainian army and state in a way that Zelensky is still able to negotiate and eventually will negotiate an end to this conflict that includes Ukrainian neutrality and non-nuclear status. And so I think the unfortunate thing too, Alan, is that I think the way this war ends in that way where Ukraine is eventually put in a position where they just have to negotiate and declare neutrality is it's not going to include the unfreezing of the Russian assets, the ending of U.S. sanctions on Russia and also on China, because a lot of the sanctions on China are now about China's ties with Russia. And so if we're not able to walk that back, it still creates this massive divide between the West and the rest of Asia that's I think going to be problems for years and years to come. Now, of course, I think Putin probably recognizes that there's major American elections coming up in a couple months, and that the results of those elections and just the fact that those elections happen are probably going to drastically change the U.S. policy. I think even if Biden wins re-election, he's going to be far more reasonable on potentially ending or curtailing U.S. support for Ukraine after the election comes up. And I do think Trump will at least be interested in reducing the war. But it gets so hard to predict at that point. This could really turn into a low intensity conflict that just burns on for years and years and years. Or this could be, see the end of the Ukrainian state, the collapse of the Ukrainian military at some point.
Well, on that note, Kyle, we're running out of time. But first of all, where can people go to support you and get more of your content?
All right, so the Libertarian Institute, antiwar.com, and my show is Conflicts of Interest. For this week and next week, Alan, I really direct your audience to antiwar.com. Our friend Dave DeCamp is taking a couple weeks off, spending some time with family on a much-needed vacation, so I'm filling in for him and just writing news stories pretty much all the time at antiwar.com, so be sure to check those out.
Oh, well, you know what? Dave DeCamp does deserve a little bit of time off. I know he puts out an absolute ton of stuff. Hey, Kyle, if you ever need anybody to fill in for you, I got you.
All right, Alan.
Because I will ask your listeners questions exactly like this one. Are you ready for the bonus round?
Let's do it.
All right. You are the first person who's ever going to get a 2-part question. This is a brand new one, Kyle. No one's ever gotten this question but you.
Are you serious?
ready?
I went back and listened to like 200 episodes of your show, wrote down all the questions. I had all the answers ready to go, and then you're going to throw me a curveball like this?
I thought you were the kind of person who would do that, so we have an all-new 2-part question just for you.
All right.
All right. I'm going to ask both parts and then let you answer. Part number 1, is a shepherd's pie a pie? And part number 2, is a pizza a pie?
No. And really the only reason I have on the first one is I don't like pie and I like shepherd's pie. Although, there's not a crust on top of the shepherd's pie. So I do think that would make it not a pie. And the same thing with the pizza. There's not a crust on top. And so that would mean it's not a pie.
All right. As your friend, I'm going to give you one kind of sideways comment and let you re-answer. There's not a crust on top of a pecan pie or a pumpkin pie or a chocolate pie. So I'm
not that familiar with pie, apparently. So So,
all right.
yeah,
So
I think we should just end it there with the gayest thing I could possibly say.
All right. So for the part one, is a shepherd's pie a pie? You said no. That is correct. Shepherd's pie is not a pie, and it has to do with the crust, Kyle, but it's not a crust on top. It's a pastry crust around the edges. There's no crust around the sides, and so shepherd's pie is not a pie. Oh, but unfortunately, you know where this is going. But is pizza a pie? You also said no. Oh, sorry, incorrect. Pizza, believe it or not, even this is not just me, Kyle. This is actually Merriam-Webster dictionary. A pizza is a pie.
It doesn't also say change the definition of a vaccine. I think you need to check your sources there, buddy.
Well, you know what? It's not just I think Oxford also has it. You know what? You don't get to question me on my show. All right. You can question.
I should. I'll start going by Anzalone, and then I'll really be an expert on pizza, and then you can't tell me any business about whether it's a pie or not. So we'll just do that for the next show.
I'm glad to hear that in Pride Month you're transitioning to Anzalone. But Kyle, thank you so much for being on the show again, buddy.
Thanks, Alan.
Guys, we'll be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter. Twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, give us on your favorite podcasting platform choice. Thanks to Spotify. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. Dave, do you have a final thought?
Dude, that show is tight.
Yeah, what a show.
Great show, great guest. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, what else am I gonna do, you know? You ever think that?
Yeah.
It's like if I didn't do this, what else would I do? You ever think that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be good. It'd be something damaging to myself.
Yeah, oh yeah, face down in the pool. Coming.
So it's probably better I'm here.
Little bitty after party.
Yeah, we don't want to go crazy. We got
all right.
A lot of stuff going on.
Guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late. And we will see you next week.
All right. I'm really excited about these highlighters I found. I almost missed the end of the show.
You know what? Women hate us because it takes so little to make us happy.
I know. $1.82 for like a 6-pack of highlighters?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? All right. After party's gonna be lit.
Yeah. There's some wild stuff that goes on in the green room.
I know.
People have no idea.
Yeah. One of these days, have a director's cut.
If it ever got leaked, that'd be the end of us.